We're gonna play football. Yippee!
Now Burrow going to launch downfield for Chase. Who's got it? Touchdown, LSU.
We're probably going to get a ham sandwich or maybe some boudin or something, go to bed and wake up tomorrow and do it again.
Come on, Coach. A ham sandwich? You just won the national title. They haven't lost in 2 years, for God's sakes.
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into The Review. A little bit later in the week than we normally do, but we had a kind of important college football game on Monday, so we decided it'd be better to wait for that game to actually be played. Before we started talking about what happened in that game and its impact on the world of college football. Joining me as always, Brother Wilkie and Brother Nelson, otherwise known as Jay Wilkerson 16 and OSG Nelson. Wilkie's frozen again. He needs to tell his son to stop downloading videos because it seems to jam him.
I know, really?
So, John, I guess you and I will talk here off the bat. And
sure.
What were your impressions of the game? It was certainly in the world of college football, could arguably have been a game changer because I think you're seeing this change in the leadership and hierarchy of college football there.
Yeah, and if you were to ask me the way too early thoughts for who's going to be in the championship game next year, I think it's going to be these two teams. I think that the result will be reversed in Trevor Lawrence's last game as a college quarterback. But I think that what you saw was what Joe Brady has meant to LSU when it comes to that offense. And Steve Ensminger taking the co-pilot role, but when you bring in someone like Joe Burrow and how he mastered everything, all the machinations of that particular offense, you got to see what it really could be. And it was early on, Kevin Steele, his plan that was against that same team, LSU, that kept them to their lowest point total of the year, but basically was sending 3, having a linebacker, and then having 7 defensive backs. That seemed to stifle LSU early on, but then when they figured out the adjustments of that quarter package, for lack of a better phrase, then you saw really what that offense could do. And slow first quarter when it came to points on the board, and then from there, you saw what LSU's been able to do all season long. And when you have Joe Burrow and that offense put up as many yards as they did against Brent Venables, I think that it really speaks to the microcosm of what LSU has been able to do this year, Phil. And it's been really magical to watch.
Wilkie, I mean, was this all the LSU and offensive design, or are we talking about Joe Burrow just being otherworldly? And are you frozen or are you with us? It looks like you are frozen because you have that same pose on your face that you had earlier. So, John, I'll put that question to you. How much of that was Joe Burrow and how much was that the offense? Because, I mean, Burrow made some throws and some plays that you just don't see quarterbacks at the college level make.
No.
Wilkie's back with us. I'll let Wilkie talk to this question. Did you hear the question there about what Burrow was doing with the ball? Some of those throws were just – he wasn't necessarily throwing the ball when somebody was breaking open. He was throwing the pattern or throwing the play and letting his guys go get it. No, that didn't work either. So I'll say back to you, John.
Okay.
Answer to said question.
Sure. I think that, once again, you saw what Joe Burrow could do with this offense, and it was basically throw to spots. It was throw and know that your receivers were going to be there. And I think that, that's part and parcel to what Joe Brady brought from the New Orleans Saints. I mean, if you think about what Drew Brees does with Ted Ginn Jr., Michael Thomas, the flexed out H-backs and the depth of the receiving core, it's about making a decision in about 2.5 seconds or less. And when you have that go down, it's like if nothing is there, either it's tuck and run or get rid of it or try to figure out something. There were very few times that I could think of really where Joe Burrow was scrambling to try to create something in the game in and of itself. And so I think that you just have to give Brady and Ensminger a lot of credit. But once again, you have what Joe Burrow is able to do, and you have to have the right guy in an offense. I mean, think about all of the teams that we've had in national championships and what their quarterbacks are capable of. You know, you go back to, think about how many times that coaches and coordinators have created an offense that benefits the skill set of that particular quarterback. And I think that we saw that with Joe Burrow and Joe Brady.
Right. That's exactly what it was. I mean, I think they really did a great job of kind of fitting what they do to the person that they had doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Wilkie, how big of an impression did you get from what LSU did in that game, especially since they kind of struggled out of the gate, but they made some adjustments, and all of a sudden it went from being a double-digit deficit to a double-digit lead almost like that?
Well, I thought Clemson had the perfect defense ready for LSU with that 7 defensive backs blitzing their middle linebacker. It really confused LSU's offense, and Joe Burrow ended up having to kind of scramble and run and throw on the run, which he's not used to doing, and it showed some inaccuracies, and so it really kind of perplexed LSU the first 3 or 4 possessions, that middle blitz, which was perfect. And then finally, Steve Ensminger and Joe Brady kind of adjusted. They tightened the offensive line, accounted for that blitzing middle linebacker. And so they gave time for Joe Burrow in the pocket to find his talented receivers. And once they figured things out, and it just started, the snowball of LSU's offense started rolling, and it was over at that point.
And were you as amazed as I was to watch how Burrow would just kind of launch the ball, loft it out there, throw it up, and Jamar Chase would just run underneath it, run past the Clemson defensive backs, balls all of a sudden right there in his hands. And the accuracy was scary.
Yeah, once he calmed down and was in the pocket and had some time to make those throws, yeah, of course, it was impressive that he was able to do that. And, the Clemson secondary has been much better than they've been in the past. This was one of the strengths. It's usually not a strength of the Clemson defense, but it was this year. But they met their match with LSU's receivers. Those are a talented bunch. And again, I just think it was a great way for LSU when they recognized that they were able to stop the blitzing linebacker. It was all she wrote from that point on. And then credit LSU's defense exactly. There's a thumbs up from a friend
Maggie.
of,
Way to go, Mags.
OSG. Yeah, there you go. Credit LSU's defense really pressing another talented group of receivers from Clemson, really pressing them at the line of scrimmage and kind of throwing them off their routes. And I thought the success of the LSU offense kind of carried over to the LSU defense. This was a special team. This LSU team was special. And there's always an it team, and LSU was that it team this year. And I think the lesson should be never play a national title game in New Orleans when LSU's on the other side. They're 3-1 at the Superdome.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you know, first of all? But I mean, you're right. It was a generational squad. Seeing how they just, for lack of a better way to put it, they kicked it up a notch. And Clemson fought hard. It wasn't for lack of effort on their part. They were ripping off in the first half huge chunks of yardage. Travis Etienne had a good game. They just couldn't stop LSU, which is the problem that everybody's had all season long. And, John, you brought up a good point about what the future holds for them. And I would argue that you're looking at a potential letdown, because for them, finding somebody that can do what Burrow did in that offense is going to be awfully hard, even with the transfer portal. And you're already hearing talk of De'Aaron King, who decided he would be better served not playing in Houston there's already talk of him finding his way down to Baton Rouge. How do you replace a Joe Burrow, and how do you make that team just as good, or if not better?
Well, I think what you do, once again, and this is the key that we had in the conversation earlier on, is I think that what you do is you cater an offense to a skill set. You don't take the skill set of a particular quarterback and try to shoehorn it into what your system is. And I think that that's going to be the test for Joe Brady and Steve Ensminger next season for whoever their starting quarterback is that I think that if you bring in Derek King, okay, fine, you know what you get, but how much of his skill set compares to Joe Burrow's? I think that there's some Venn diagram there, but there's a lot that's different. And I think that this is going to be the challenge for the coaching staff in trying to tweak what they have to fit what that next quarterback is going to be. And there's also talk that King might be heading to Arkansas, Wilkie. So you might have your portaled quarterback hanging out with Kendall Briles next year too. But I think the key, Wilkie, is to make sure that your skill set is tied to the quarterback and not trying to turn it the other way around where it's like, okay, you have a quarterback and you must do this. I think that you have to be malleable in that regard.
Well, to even more to that point, Clemson may actually be the team I'm looking at as being taking that next step next year, because Trevor Lawrence is back. He's going to have another year under his belt.
Everybody on that offense is back.
Yeah. How good could that team be? Because you're talking about a team that accomplished an awful lot where they are, and they're not losing a whole lot.
Well, I say that, but Travis Etienne and I believe T. Higgins have decisions to make.
Yeah.
They got to make it by Friday. Both seem to be leaning towards staying. But now if they leave, it still makes it, Lynn J. Dixon is there to replace Travis Etienne, and that's not a bad way to go. And still got Justin Ross and that group of receivers. I think there's like 80 of them that
80. Exactly.
Yeah, that run 4-1-40 or whatever. But you're right. Clemson's going to be the it team again. They're going to be in every magazine cover this year. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the face of college football heading into the season. He's going to be the Heisman Trophy front runner. It's going to be his trophy to lose. Kind of setting up like a Peyton Manning scenario from 1997, don't you think? Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. So Clemson is, don't take much out of the loss. I mean, this is the program now in college football, judging from the recruiting class. They never had these kind of recruiting classes, and even when they were winning national titles a few years ago. Now it's starting to pay off.
Yeah, they played a pretty good game, even in a loss.
Yeah.
Yes, they played an excellent game. They just played a team that it was the it team. Clemson's going to be, like I say, on every magazine cover. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the face of college football, and they're going to be fine. They're going to roll through the ACC. They're going to play in Charlotte for the title. They're going to win it and be in the playoff again. You can bank it. So say what you want about Clemson. I mean, they are going to be hard to deal with the next few years.
Any other teams?
I agree.
Any other teams that kind of jump off the page to you? One that does for me is, and I'm saying this despite the fact that we're based here in the Atlanta area, and that's the Georgia Bulldogs, who made a big announcement this week by picking up a guy who I believe may be the perfect quarterback fit for them out of the transfer portal, and that's Jamie Newman, who played at Wake Forest last year and put up some humongous numbers. And now he's got an offense, and he's in a program where he's got some offense and some weapons around him. How dangerous could that team be?
I think it fits a skill set that Georgia needs. The thing is, I think what's going to happen, there's going to be a happy medium between that RPO skill set of Jamie Newman, and Newman himself wanted to learn how to be more of a drop back passer to improve his NFL skills. So there's going to be some kind of happy medium there with the Georgia coaches. Now, obviously, Kirby Smart and his staff are going to want the use of his legs. And Jamie Newman might be coming in going, you know what, I've got that skill, but I got to learn how to be a 5-7 drop and be able to function in the pocket. So there's good. I think that once he gets into spring practice and the fall camp, those are going to be things they're going to be working on to improve his skill set. But I agree with you, Phil. He makes Georgia's offense much more potent. He had great receivers to throw to at Wake Forest until Josh Surratt was hurt. So the other thing I was thinking about with Jamie Newman is, I'm not sure toward the end of his tenure there at his time there in Wake, if he and Dave Clawson were on the same page, especially toward the end.
Yeah.
And, Coach Clawson tends to try to rein in his quarterbacks, stay within the system. He may have that kind of freedom at Georgia.
And not the reverse, because we've seen Justin Fields get chased away because he didn't fit, and we know what Jake Fromm can do, Wilkie, when it comes to passing, and he seemed to be throttled down a little bit. You don't have that concern?
Well,
I think
maybe because, but I think it's a much tighter rein at Wake Forest. Yeah. I mean, it's a system. And at Georgia, I think there was some freedom there for Jake Fromm because he had been a 3-year starter. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think that there are some mutual things where Jamie Newman can launch that offense to a different level. He wants to improve his skill set for the NFL, and Georgia offers that.
Yeah, and you can't leave out Alabama because they don't. They just restock.
There's an NCAA bylaw saying that you can't rule out Alabama.
Yeah, and Mac Jones in relief of Tua Tagovailoa was pretty impressive, particularly in the bowl game. He threw for a ton of yards. He looked like the Alabama offense looked like they didn't miss a beat. But the flip side of that is you're talking about a team that's going to have to replace almost its entire wide receiver core, and there were some damn good wide receivers on that football team. But they also get a couple of guys who were injured on defense back, which may elevate that defense, which was one of their weaknesses last year. You're talking about Alabama. You're talking top 5 potential team pretty much every time you line them up.
Yeah, and then you look at their schedule, and then you look at the freshmen and the impact players. But once again, I think that you look at injuries. And when you had the injury to Tua, then you had to kind of figure things out on the fly. And always look at Alabama going up against ranked opposition. And when it comes to their schedule, especially toward the tail end, see who's a top 10 team that Alabama is going to be facing. Traditionally, Nick Saban's had a lot of trouble going up against fellow top 10 teams.
And don't sleep on Ohio State. The Ohio State people on Twitter last night during the championship game saying, we should be in the championship. We should be one of the 2 best teams. Clearly, these aren't the 2 best teams, which after I got done laughing, I just kind of read, whatever. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're going to be back too. Justin Fields is not going anywhere. They can play some football. They're going to lose J.K. Dobbins. Sure, Chase Young going to the pros as well, but another team, another brand name that just reloads.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Wilkie, you look at a team like Ohio State, and they're another one of those cyclical squads where you sit there and you look at who they lose, but then it's that next wave of young kids coming right back in to take over and really just get back to where they were. They just need to get over that hump and get to the last game of the year.
Well, the key to me is who are the returning quarterbacks?
Yes.
Because you have to have a great quarterback to play in the playoff era now. It's a discussion I had recently about does offense win championships now and defense just kind of maintains the lead?
Yeah.
That's
there
what
was any question this year cemented that.
Exactly. I mean, you've got to have a great quarterback. So I'm looking at programs that are returning great quarterbacks into the fold, and Ohio State is one of those teams. And it's hard to argue how they're not going to be in the playoff chase for next year. And, I'm kind of hard pressed right now. I'm interested to see what happens at Southern Cal because I thought their quarterback wasn't that bad the freshman whose name escapes me right now.
Slovis.
Clayton Slovis.
Keaton
You know,
Slovis.
I thought he was. I mean, he was forced into a crazy situation. He was a third stringer, and he turned out to be a pretty good franchise quarterback for Southern Cal. So it all depends on the coaching situation, and whether Clay Helton is free to coach him up. I thought Graham Harrell coming in as OC was big for him. Texas is kind of that wild card because Sam Ehlinger is coming back, but there's such an underachieving program. It's hard for me to. Hard for me to put them on that pedestal right now. So whoever's got a really good returning quarterback, you've got to feel really good about having a chance in the playoff era. Of course, there's always those teams that develop that type of quarterback as the season goes on, and or surprises people in spring and fall camp. That's going to be fun to see which hotshot freshman is actually who's gone to a school is going to get the chance right off the bat. I'm thinking Sam Howell, North Carolina right now. He had an impressive freshman year. He's got some talent coming in.
Harrison Bailey at Tennessee. I'll give you that one as a true freshman, considering what Jeremy Pruitt wants to accomplish quickly when it comes to the Volunteers. So, yeah, Harrison Bailey for me is another one that stands out.
An opportunity knocks there for the Volunteers. Another team who finished fairly strong considering how badly they started in the season.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily jump to the conclusion here and say they're back because they won their last handful of games, but they did play better.
Yes.
Last year, Texas was they're back team, and look what happened to them. 8-5.
They're back.
Guys, what do we say we wrap up here in the first block of the show? When we come back, we've got some coaching to talk about. And something to look forward to in 2020 is going to be the Battle of Mississippi, the Egg Bowl, and God help mercy, the SEC Media Days are going to be absolutely hilarious. Don't forget, you are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. We'd love to hear from you. We're always on social media. We're not hard to find, at OSG Sports on both Facebook and Twitter. You can get our shows through Spreaker, iTunes, Google Play. John's been flashing his phone for the phone app. So many places, so many opportunities. Make sure you tune in and check out the latest and greatest in college football. And when we come back in a minute, a pirate looks at Mississippi. That and more when the review returns in just over a minute.
That tiger at LSU, that's a live, real tiger sitting in there in some metal structure, which clearly he could rip his way out of if he wanted to, even half wanted to. That's an awesome one.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
There's a place in Kansas called Pitt State, and I used to see it on film. We didn't play them. Called Pitt State, and they're the gorillas. And there should be a lot more gorillas for mascots.
Thanks for sticking around. You are listening to the B block. That's the second block if you're counting alphabetically. The second block of the review featuring the online sports guys talking everything and anything college football. In the first half of the show, we talked about the college football championship. In this block, it's coaches. And guys, how hard did we laugh?
Oh, still laughing.
Mississippi State's athletic director posted a tweet on his Twitter timeline that didn't say anything, just had a GIF showing the back of a pirate, in this case from Pirates of the Caribbean, but that's a whole nother issue.
Johnny Depp's the new head coach?
Mike Leach comes south. He's in the SEC, boys. What's in store for us?
Hilarity.
Yeah. Just strap in. Get your seatbelts. Get your seatbelts ready. I mean, we've talked about what Media Day could be, what Media Day will be. All right, you try to be the schedule maker for Media Day when it comes to the Southeastern Conference now. Yeah, what day are you going to make sure that you have Kiffkins, the coach, Saban, and now, I mean, Mike Leach a part of it? You're going to have to separate all of these guys, and I want to see the schedule maker figure out SEC Media Days. And the only thing I can figure is that you start the day with one of them, meaning Kiffin or Leach, and then you end the day with the others. So that way you don't have this stampede of media wilkie that you know is going to be there having to do a back-to-backer.
I would suggest to the SEC is to split Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, and Sam Pittman 3 separate days. And you and the three of us have covered that event many times, and we know, the makeup of it. And we know in the writer's room, it's a big podium with theater seating and all that good stuff. I would advise for those three guys to find, I guess it's still at what was once the Winfrey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe there's a comedy club there that they could have some kind of setting there where
open mic night at the Chuckle Hut in Hoover.
They're at a stage and the media is sitting in the audience, whether it's like tables and chairs or whatever. I think that'd be a more appropriate forum for those three than it would be at the podium. But we thought we had Nirvana with Spurrier and with Bielema and holding court and everything. But now you got these three guys. I think it's, to me, Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach in the state of Mississippi is a breath of fresh air for football in that state and for the SEC in general.
Hires. I love it.
We're old timers here. When we think of Ole Miss and Mississippi State, we think of guys like Jackie Sherrill and Emery Ballard and Billy Brewer and guys that are just old country boys that are head football coaches at the SEC level. Mm-hmm. Now you got characters, and would you rather sit in a presser with Mike Leach or with Jimbo Fisher? I mean, what? And even Coach O. I mean, Ed Orgeron is a character all to himself, and he's probably going to be on a high after winning the national title.
Yes, Coach O will be overshadowed this coming season in the publicity lines.
I mean, just think that you usually bring 3 teams, 4 teams a day at the SEC.
That's what I'm saying. How do you schedule this now?
Okay, just think if whoever schedules it has Leach and Kiffin and Sam Pittman all coming on the same day, and then he had Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, what? Which one are you gonna? What are you gonna pick?
You camp out, get your tape, get your tape.
There's some other things that play with this. You're talking about 2 of the best offensive coaches in football, arguably. Yeah. Maybe not the single solitary one, but these guys are in the top 5. Both of them are super progressive offensively. Leach has got tentacles all over the coaching world at both the NFL and college level, of guys who have adopted his air raid system and put on absolute shows. And Kiffin has scored points. He was the guy who helped bring Alabama into the 21st century. when it comes to offense.
If you're a 5-star quarterback and a 5-star receiver, you want to play for Mike Leach.
Yeah.
And now you want to go to Starkville, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with Lane Kiffin.
I give Ole Miss 2 years before they're under investigation by the NCAA. 2 years.
Again?
Yes, again. 2 years under Lane Kiffin. I give the second year under Lane Kiffin. After that year is over, the NCAA comes knocking. Look, when you're already having closed curtain meetings with Hugh Freeze in a restaurant, don't tell me they ain't figuring out how to game the system. So I give Lane Kiffin 2 years.
Well, I'm waiting for one of the Mike Leach press conferences to talk about deep frying catfish. I'm sure when harvest season comes, maybe his impressions of of harvesting cotton or whatever agricultural endeavors are in Mississippi still. You know he's going to have speeches about that because the man's talked about weddings and God knows what.
See, Media Day, the weekly press conference for Mike Leach in Starkville is going to be must-see TV. So if you're there in the region, you know you have to cover it. If you know that when it's going to happen, you know that the 3-letter network covering that conference is going to have cameras up and running at the Lane Kiffin press conference every single week. Every single week, they're going to have a camera coming out of Stark Vegas, and every single week, you're going to have a camera coming out of Arkansas. So it's all a part of SEC media days, but at the same time, the weekly coverage, it's going to be must-see TV. It really is.
We haven't even talked about what the Egg Bowl is going to be like.
Oh God!
That you talk about must-see TV
on Thanksgiving night.
Uh-huh.
When you got an NFL game competing against, but who cares? I'm going to watch the Egg Bowl now.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen.
These two guys involved with it that ended on a play where a penalty on an Ole Miss player for lifting his leg in the end zone for trying to pee on it.
Idiot.
Ended up costing them the game.
Idiot.
Look what happened, the fallout. Look what we get now.
Think about this, though, for a second. You're talking about Leach, Kiffin, Ensminger, and Joe Brady, Alabama, all in this, and Gus Malzahn and Auburn, all in the SEC West.
Kendall Briles.
Kendall Briles at Arkansas.
All guys who have
with Sam Pittman
designed or drawn up offenses that could easily average 40 to 50 points a game. Is the SEC West going to suddenly become the wild West?
4-hour games, guarantee it.
Are we talking?
Well, I was going to say, are you suggesting Big 12 or Pac-10 or Pac-12 type of game? Because you've got that Pac-12 influence now with Kiffin and with Mike Leach. Yeah. And so anybody in the SEC West that happens to have a type 5 defense, probably Alabama, will probably be successful. Or Auburn. Yeah, exactly. So there's your key right there. Whoever has a top 5 defense will win that division. Man, now I never thought when Jimbo Fisher took the Texas A&M job with his offensive pedigree that he would be the guy that's kind of out of touch now. He's still running the same offense he ran at Florida State.
And he's still yelling at his quarterbacks because they apparently don't know what they're doing, but that's just me.
But he has $70 million guaranteed.
All guaranteed.
And at the end of the day, Texas A&M is stuck with that decision.
Yes, and Jimbo Fisher, the quitter, has, I believe, the number of foxes to give would be 0.
So what a contrast between the West and the East and the SEC.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah, in a big way. Oh, and by the way, speaking of potential transfers, also rumors floating around there that Felipe Franks is paying a visit to the folks out in Arkansas as well.
Yeah.
Possible reason.
Well, Dogs need a quarterback. Didn't work out so well last year.
No.
Yeah, 2 graduate transfers.
They need a lot more than a quarterback, but that's a whole conversation for another day.
Thanks for reminding me.
there's a lot to look forward this offseason. Spring football will be here before you know it. There will always be things for us to talk about here on the review because college football never ends.
Nope.
Guys, what do you say we wrap it up for this week?
Sounds good.
Nick Rolovich, your new head coach at Washington State. Enjoy.
Good fit.
Okay, guys. That'll put a wrap on the review. You are listening to the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. We are the online sports guys. Make sure you download the phone app, kids, because it's free. Free. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully, we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Just blaring. Welcome to the channel. When the visiting team would come through the tunnel, they'd all be hurling bananas at the visiting team. You'd see bananas everywhere, bananas bouncing off helmets, bananas just flying through the air. And that was welcome to Pitt State, because you're